Hey everybody, it's Paul with Reporting Live from my sofa. We're still in the Lowe's parking lot here. I've filmed about 3 or 4 videos and had to come back out. It's Thursday night. So much has happened today. We've had updates with this trial, updates on the Jennifer Dulos case, new McFlurries coming out, you name it. I have been rogue filming all day long, and so all this stuff has come out, and I was like, I just have to go film a whole bunch of little videos real quick. And so this one, I've got a lot of opinions on this one, and this is the phone call that took place from Tim Jones Jr. to Tim Jones Sr. and his aunt. And this was while Tim Jones, he's still in prison. It was from prison. Before we get into the details of the call, can we please talk about the audio for this trial? Y'all, I had to sit there with my earphones in, just, any little thing, and I was like, I'm sure because it's coming over, we're listening to it on our devices and stuff, but even then, so I'm like, this has just been the worst audio. I hope the people in the courtroom have had a better time with it. Obviously, they're there, they can hear it, but it's been horrible. And so most of that phone call, I had no idea what they were saying. I just was like, I don't know what they're talking about. I had no idea. But I got bits and pieces from it, enough to form a sofa opinion. So let's start talking about a couple of things. First of all, barely understand what they're saying. That's here nor there at this point. So in the beginning, it's like he's talking about changing his meds or something, and the dad's going in and out. The dad's going like in and out or whatever about, oh, you need to be happier and something like that. And, Tim Jones Jr. makes a comment about, what did he say? Oh, they think I'm a little bit crazy, but I don't care. And it's weird hearing, that, number one. That's not the most shocking part of the phone call. But him and his dad and aunt laughing and stuff. And again, I get it's been like years since this has happened. They've gone through all these different emotions. So I don't expect them to constantly be like, oh my God. I grasp that. But nonetheless, because we're seeing snippets of it, and we're seeing the end result of a huge saga, it's just like, wow, how can they be doing that? It's just jarring. And to hear it in this context, because again, I'm just like, oh my gosh. I feel like this right here, I don't know why they waited to play this at the sentencing. Maybe this is their ace in the hole type situation. But I feel like the prosecution knew they were going to win this case, and this is what they were using for, as like we are for sure going to get a conviction out of this. You know what I'm saying? Or a death penalty out of this, I'm sorry. So, let's continue. They say something about him being a danger to himself and things like the whole beginning of the phone call is just very confusing to me because you can't really hear. They're talking over each other. The dad kind of mumbles his words most of the time, and so it just is it's frustrating to me. I have a very hard time hearing what exactly it is. So that being said, let's see here. Aunt says something about okay, so this is where it starts to get like, what are we talking about here? The aunt says something about a relationship and trying to make one work, and it's like, usually like when a relationship ends or something like that happens, that one person is crushed and the other one's just an asshole. And he says, you hit the nail right on the head, Auntie. And this is when you start to get like, oh my gosh, and the conversation that takes place. And then at one point he goes, I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling. I feel like I went insane. And the dad and the aunt both agree, like, yeah. And this brings up, too, another aspect. At this point, when this kind of tragedy strikes, because we see this a lot of times, and this is one of these things that always comes up of how, when a child creates an atrocity of a crime and the parents stand by them or whatever, and it doesn't mean that they agree with the crime or whatever, but they're still their parent type thing. And so I think people have a hard time wrapping their minds around that. I've watched some documentaries about situations like this, and I need to get the name of them to share with y'all, because it's very fascinating to hear the parents and what they say how they deal with it or how they don't deal with it, simply because we don't want more loss. And so, I mean, and I get it, but it's just interesting to see how in this particular phone call, I feel like they're trying to pivot a lot of, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. You didn't do this. You were forced into this, type situation. And I'm just kind of like, really? But then I'm just like, well, you know what? They're probably having to all agree because, I mean, what else are they going to do at this point? I mean, anything else besides that would be shunning him away from them. And clearly they don't want to. They made the choice to keep him around. So it's going to have to be well, yeah, it's Amber's fault. If that makes sense. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way, but it's just an interesting choice that they've made to kind of go that direction. Anyways, let's see here. He said, okay, he says there's a catalyst that caused him to do it. And now that he's, on these meds, he can think clear, yada, yada, yada. And basically he goes into this whole thing about how he saw Natan going through the same pain that he did with his own mother, and he didn't want him to go through with that. And so essentially he's coming back to this whole thing, but this is less about, oh, I got upset. I mean, maybe he got upset in the moment or whatever, but it sounds way more pre-planned this time. Like this is already coming, because you're not gonna have one quick flash of anger and say, I don't want him to suffer like I did, let me kill everybody. You see where I'm going with that? And basically he's like, he blames Amber for this. This is Amber's fault. I mean, these are his words. If she had been home instead of bopping the boy next door, none of this would have happened. I mean, literally. And so it becomes apparent to me that he was getting back at her. And I think that somewhere she knows that too, because I think she knows this man well. She probably knows what he's capable of. And did you hear the part where the dad started to say the thing about you'll never see the light? He goes, no, don't say that. Like Tim Jones Jr. thought, like, no, it's a possibility. I think he was literally like, I'm going to play the insanity role and I'm going to go to a mental hospital. I honestly think that's what his whole MO was. I think he completely knew what he was doing. I think he was playing God and figured, you know what, these kids are going to... I think there was probably a part in his mind that could make that correlation, but that was a small drop in the bucket compared to getting back at Amber. Because I mean, it's just how can you even sit there and say, well, if you didn't do this, I'm going to kill the kids. I mean, really? I mean, something like that. It's just like, and maybe that's what the human mind has to do in that situation because it's so horrible. I don't know. I don't ever want to find out personally for myself. You know what I'm saying? That phone call, and thank God we could hear clearly. I could hear clearly by the time they got to the talk about Amber. I could hear that part just fine. So I was like, well, thank God. Because that phone call was so damning. I was like, oh God, you're done, dude. I mean, I was just like, get old Sparky going. Warm her up. Because after all this, and then the jury hears that. I mean, the prosecution, this is what I'm talking about. But the prosecution, they're good. Yeah, they are good. They're very well spoken. Their diction's very good. Their suits, their clothing fits well. And I know I don't mean to keep talking about the clothing, but it makes a difference. I mean, it does. It just, I don't know. It's just like the presentation. As I sit here in my t-shirt criticizing, my Old Navy t-shirt criticizing, oh, well, they just should dress better. This is what I'm wearing. So, let's take that into consideration. Look at the source. But, I mean, it just, again, at the end of the day, it's almost like, the devil removes its mask and you see it in its entirety through that phone call. And, I mean, there's so much more that went on, too, we're going to get to that in other videos. But this was just like, wow. I consider this bombshell evidence right here. I'm just like, oh, done. So, anyways, I'm not going to keep going on. I hope everybody's doing well. We will be talking more about this over the next few days until the verdict comes in. And so stay tuned. I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.